Hi, it's Katrina. Santa Cristina Well. The well of Santa Cristina is not actually a traditional well and is much older than Santa Cristina herself. This structure has been around for a very long time, and the well is just a part of a very ancient site. Located in the Mediterranean island of Sardinia, it was built by the ancient Nuragic civilization during the 11th or 12th century BC. These people were extremely talented builders and stoneworkers, and many of their stone structures still stand today. With seemingly perfect proportions and geometry, it seems like a much newer structure than it actually is. At the entrance, there's a semicircular rock enclosure surrounding a trapezoidal staircase that leads underground. The ceiling of the entrance features what look like upside-down stairs that seem to mirror the staircase below them. These are actually known as a series of architraves. Inside is a well that sits beneath a 23-foot-high dome. It's clear, based on the Nuragic culture's surviving architecture, that they were expert masons. They are famous for their smooth and perfectly squared stonework that looks practically modern. But they left no written records behind, and the purpose of the Santa Cristina well is a mystery. The structure was sacred to its builders and functioned as a ceremonial site, but nobody knows what exact beliefs inspired the Nuragic people to design and build it. The site was possibly used by a water cult, since access to the water well is its main feature. It may have also functioned as an astronomical observatory, a place people went to observe the stars and other heavenly bodies. Every year during the equinoxes, the sun lines up directly with the opening and sunlight shines down on the water. During an event called a lunar standstill, which happens every 18 years and 6 months, the moon shines down through the well's ceiling. This would have been an extremely sacred day for the people, and now you can actually visit the site and try to imagine what kind of ancient rituals must have happened here. Like the ancient Maya and their cenotes, the Nuragic people created domes to honor the water deep underground, as it was here that the people honored the mother goddess, and some of the earliest rituals were born. The Tablet of Shamash. Some say the Tablet of Shamash is proof of ancient alien technology. In Mesopotamia, Shamash was the god of the sun, the truth, and justice. It was believed that Shamash rode across the sky on his solar chariot and then traveled through the underworld at night as he prepared for the new sunrise. This story goes all the way back to about 3500 BC. Fast forward to the 1800s, archaeologists uncovered the mysterious Tablet of Shamash at the site of Tel Abu Haba in Iraq. This was once a Babylonian city where the god Shamash was worshipped by all. The tablet seems to depict Shamash as a huge, imposing god, much larger than his human subjects. It also has celestial symbols and a large piece of strange technology in the center of the scene. The suggestion is that the Babylonians had some kind of cosmic technology that allowed them to convene with extremely large deities. These deities, like Shamash, may have actually been ancient aliens that were in contact with the earliest human civilizations. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Nabta Playa. Nabta Playa is one of the oldest stone circles in the world. It's located south of modern-day Cairo in the Nubian desert, one of the world's hottest, driest, most inhospitable environments. This site is so old it predates Egypt's pre-dynastic era, and it may be where ancient Egyptian astronomy originated. In other words, Nabta Playa could be the oldest example left behind by the civilization that eventually became ancient Egypt. The rocks there are perfectly aligned with the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. They were arranged by a civilization that existed 7,500 years ago and that scholars don't know much about. Researchers believe that the formation may have been used to track the summer and fall equinoxes, although probably much more than that. Anthropologist Fred Windorf discovered the site in 1974, when he nearly walked past it without noticing its significance. Thankfully, he took a second look, and he found the remnants of an ancient society that engaged in complex cultural rituals. These stone structures distinguish them from the hunter-gatherers that lived at the time, whose traditions were much simpler. Nabta Playa is part of a growing body of evidence that ancient people knew much more about the stars, celestial bodies, and movement of the earth than we give them credit for. Ancient Stargate. At the incredible site of Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka, there is what some believe to be an ancient stargate. This stargate could have been used to teleport ancient people through the cosmos to mysterious places far away in the universe. But let's start at the beginning. Anuradhapura, also known as the Land of Kings, was a sacred city constructed back in 377 BC. Today, it's at the heart of the Buddhist culture in Sri Lanka. There are ancient Buddhist temples here, giant stupas, and the site attracts thousands of devoted pilgrims every year. But there is one curious symbol carved onto the side of a rocky ruin that nobody can figure out. It's been bothering archaeologists and historians for over a century. Most mainstream scientists agree it was made as some kind of cosmic star chart, though little is known about what the chart shows or what its purpose may have been. To make matters even stranger, the icons carved in the chart are unlike anything else in the area. It almost looks as if an entirely different culture of people made the chart. This has caused speculation that the star chart is in fact an ancient stargate, perhaps left behind by a race of beings that had significantly more knowledge about space and time than we do today. Or just the ancients once again were much more knowledgeable about the world than we give them credit for. Light of the Pharaoh. Beneath the mighty temple of Hathor at Dendera, there is an interesting picture carved on the wall of a subterranean passage that appears to show an ancient pharaoh experimenting with a light bulb. In the carving, the pharaoh can clearly be seen with a very large light bulb, with the light bulb even having a filament and being connected to a wire. It looks as though the Egyptians may have come up with the light bulb thousands of years before Thomas Edison was even born. But in true Egyptian fashion, the depiction of the light bulb is full of mystery. Experts say the bulb is actually a sacred symbol and the shape is just a coincidence. The filament inside is the snake creator god Harsomtus, or Horus, the unifier of two lands. The bulb may be the womb of a goddess held by a lotus flower that looks like the bulb socket. There are many similar motifs throughout the temple, and although it is fun to believe that ancient Egyptians may have had electricity, there is no evidence of glass shards or metal sockets or filaments of any kind. These symbols are actually much more linked with ancient Egyptian mythology than with modern technology. Experts have never actually found a light bulb manufactured in ancient Egypt, though these strange images appear to suggest they figured out how electricity works far before any other culture. The Dendera light symbolizes the depiction of the sun god emerging from the lotus flower, which in a funny coincidence has the same shape as a modern light bulb, giving us a slice of sunlight whenever we want it. The Inca Water Temple. The Inca Water Temple at the archaeological site of Ollantaytambo in Peru was erected to worship their water deities. It's one of the most impressive things the Inca ever built, even though most people don't even know about it. It was an advanced water fountain that surpassed the ordinary standards of Inca engineering and construction. It's also remarkable because the temple is situated at over 9,000 feet above sea level. Yet despite the intense altitude and the dry weather of the desert, the Inca managed to divert a series of streams and channels, using them to incorporate highly advanced water fountains. These fountains boast a relatively modern knowledge of hydraulic principles. Using these principles, the Inca created over a dozen continuously flowing waterfalls that were used as ceremonial fountains. Even after 1,000 years, water from the streams continues to fuel the fountains, streaming between the blocks as if the temple was built just yesterday. Flexible glass. The Phoenicians are credited with developing the first man-made glass, which was eventually made throughout the Roman Empire. But legend holds that the ancient Romans invented a shatterproof flexible glass called vitrum flexile. This supposedly happened during the reign of Tiberius Caesar. The Roman author and philosopher Pliny the Elder wrote that the Emperor Tiberius Caesar banned flexible glass to prevent the values of gold, silver, copper, and other precious metals from plummeting. But Pliny also admitted that the story might not be true. In his satirical novel The Satyricon, Gaius Petronius wrote that the man who invented flexible glass showed it to Tiberius by throwing a cup on the ground. It didn't break, and the emperor was shocked. The cup was slightly dented from the impact of hitting the floor, so the glassmaker used a tiny hammer to pound it back into shape. After learning that this man was the only person who knew how to make flexible glass, Tiberius executed him for the same reason Pliny mentioned, to keep the value of precious metals high. Modern researchers doubt that flexible glass ever really existed, especially since Pliny mentioned that the story's truthfulness is doubtful. But experts have tried to figure out if it did exist, What would it be made of? And so far they've come up empty-handed. Was this perhaps a secret recipe made by a lonely inventor? Lost knowledge from the ancient world? The closest scientists have gotten to creating flexible glass was by adding boric oxide to the recipe. But this didn't make the glass flexible, it simply strengthened the material and made it more resistant to breaking. Even if flexible glass was real, there is a good chance we will never know what it was made of, and that its inventor took this secret recipe to the grave. A universal antidote. Mithridates VI Eupator of Pontus was a ruthless ruler who reigned from 120 to 63 BC. He orchestrated mass killings and was one of the Roman Republic's most formidable foes. But having enemies comes at a cost, and Mithridates was paranoid that someone was going to try to kill him. His father had been poisoned to death, making him especially worried that he could meet the same fate. And let's face it, back in the day, it was probably likely that you would be poisoned. You even had to watch out for your friends. Mithridates studied and experimented until he came up with the perfect solution, a universal antidote called Mithridate that was effective against all known toxins at the time. According to Pliny the Elder, it contained around 50 ingredients that were ground into a honey mixture and made into tablets. To prove that Mithridate worked, the relentless despot reportedly consumed and survived fatal doses of poison in front of audiences. He began using the concoction regularly and built up a tolerance to numerous toxins. Legend claims that when he was surrounded by his enemies about to be defeated, Mithridates tried to commit suicide with poison, but he failed since he was so resistant, and he had to ask a soldier to kill him instead. Mithridate remained popular for centuries. It was one of the most highly sought-after drugs during the Middle Ages and Renaissance, especially in Italy and France. You know, when the Medici and the Borgia were killing each other. But the recipe was lost, and modern researchers can only speculate about what was in the alleged miracle drug. Sacsayhuaman. Built during the 15th century on the outskirts of what is now Cusco, Peru, Sacsayhuaman was the historic capital of the Inca Empire. The walled ancient complex sits on a steep hill 12,142 feet above sea level. Its walls are so well fitted, even modern technology can't explain their accuracy. To give you an idea, a piece of paper won't even fit between the huge stones that were used to build this engineering model. What's more, the boulders fit together precisely and without the use of mortar. Each stone weighs as much as 220 tons, and they are some of the largest used in any pre-Hispanic building in South America. Scientists don't know how the Incas built the site. It would be extremely difficult to do with modern tools and technology, but the Inca did not even have iron tools or knowledge of the wheel. The site is baffling, but perhaps the problem is that we don't give the Incas enough credit for having the sheer ingenuity that was required to build it. Spanish conquistadors didn't believe that indigenous people, whom they saw as backwards and uncivilized, were capable of creating such a magnificent complex. The colonizers instead concluded that evil spirits were responsible for Sacsayhuaman. Even today, people are quick to resort to theories about ancient aliens, the supernatural, and conspiracies when it comes to explaining ancient sites that defy our understanding. But it's probably a lot more realistic to admit that the builders were extremely smart and skilled, and that we just haven't figured out how they did it. Roman concrete. Modern concrete is part of our everyday lives and is a simple mixture of cement, water, sand, and rocks that was invented during the 18th century. It's the world's most commonly used building material. However, the ancients had their own versions of it. The Persians, Egyptians, Assyrians, and Romans all used concrete, and it was especially popular throughout the Roman Empire. Romans had the best recipe of all. In fact, the Romans are credited with perfecting concrete. Its strength and durability can be seen in some of their buildings, which still stand over 1,000 years after the Western Roman Empire fell. This is both impressive and shocking, especially since modern concrete can break down in as little as 50 years, according to science author Zahra Ahmad. Scientists discovered that Roman concrete strengthened over time. In places where volcanic ash had dissolved, a rare mineral called aluminum tobermorite had formed. The Romans may have caused this effect by pouring seawater into their mixture, causing it to react with the volcanic ash to produce the aluminum tobermorite and another hard mineral called philipsite. Unfortunately, this process can take centuries, and is not practical for modern use. Scientists are hoping to develop a similar but quicker forming solution. The Black Pyramid. Turns out there very well might be a giant black pyramid hidden beneath Alaska. Stories of a secretive black pyramid beneath the Alaskan ice emerged back in 1992. The find was made by seismologists who noticed something peculiar in the area known as the Alaskan Triangle, a place famous for anomalies and weird occurrences. It's within the Alaskan Triangle that mysterious disappearances happen, that planes vanish and are never seen again, and that thousands of humans have simply evaporated into thin air. The Great Black Pyramid is allegedly twice the size of the biggest pyramid in Egypt. It's also allegedly guarded by the US military because it is, in fact, alien technology. None of this has ever been proven and is all based on rumor and speculation, but many want to believe that there could be some truth to the rumors. Linda Moulton Howe announced the existence of the Black Pyramid to the world back in 2012 on a radio talk show called Coast to Coast AM. She and her colleagues believe the pyramid was used by aliens as a type of energy generator that doesn't require any outside fuel. It creates its very own energy, enough to power all of Canada and Alaska. And this, she argues, is why the US military is guarding it so heavily ever since they found the thing in 1949. However, nobody with any credibility has ever physically seen it. And even if there is a large pyramid underground, who's to say it's not a natural rock formation? At this point, it's anyone's guess. Worms on Mars. A scientist recently claimed that he discovered worms and shrimp living on Mars. The absolutely bizarre claim was made thanks to the Opportunity rover, which took photographs for NASA on the surface of the red planet back in 2004. Researcher Ron Gabriel Joseph, someone considered a fringe scientist in the mainstream scientific community, believes the pictures taken by the rover show small critters living in the Martian soil. He says that these worms and shrimp are proof that life evolved on Mars at some point in the distant past. He also says they are proof that some vestige of that life still exists on the planet today. The real question here is, why could Ron see the worms and shrimps when nobody else could? It's apparently because he looked extra hard at the photographs, spotting tiny structures in the soil that he says are the bodies of worms. He calls them biological Martian tube worms, which resemble the worms that live on Earth. Specifically, the ones at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean that thrive near hydrothermal vents. He measured the Martian worms at about 3 millimeters long, the same length as the shrimp-like creatures he also saw in the pictures. Unfortunately, NASA has had nothing to say on the matter. The scientific community is convinced the worms are in fact just rocks, and that people see what they want to see. Ancient prosthetic eye. A discovery was made by a team of Iranian archaeologists in an ancient human settlement outside Zabul, Iran. This place is known as the Burnt City and goes back thousands of years. The archaeologists were shocked to discover what appeared to be a giant Cyclops priestess. It was discovered to be the skeleton of a woman of high standing, dating back to 4,800 years ago. She was about 6 feet tall, which was significantly taller than most people of her time, and she died at the age of 25. The most surprising thing about her was that she had an artificial eye in the left socket of her skull, making this the oldest ocular prosthetic in medical history, predating ancient Egyptian prosthetic eyes that were made in 2000 BC. Researchers say whoever designed the prosthetic eyeball must have had a very strong grasp on ocular anatomy. Even the blood vessels of the eyeball were recreated with gold wiring, and there were tiny holes so it could be held in place with thread. The eyeball was covered in a thin film of gold, which would have made her look quite impressive. It was made out of tar and animal fat and was probably finished off by an ancient jeweler. The research team say that the mesmerizing effects of the golden eyeball would have convinced those who saw it that she could see into the future. It must have glittered spectacularly, conferring on the woman a mysterious and supernatural gaze. Alien visitors. A Harvard professor named Avi Loeb believes that in 2017, aliens visited our solar system. A peculiar object flying through space at first just looked like a piece of space rock. But it is much stranger than that. with some even arguing that it may have actually been an interstellar object sent from an alien society. The object was first discovered by the Pan-STARRS telescope in Hawaii by scientists looking for asteroids. By the time the telescope got a look at it, the object was already moving out of our system. It looked kind of like a giant floating space cigar, over 10 times longer than it was wide. The Harvard professor says this shape is not normal for any natural object. When the researchers studied the orbit of the mysterious space cigar, they realized that it had flown in from another solar system. It is such a strange shape and had such a strange orbit that more than one astronomer has said that it could be an alien spacecraft. Professor Avi says its movements were not natural, as the supposed space rock completely ignored the gravity of our sun. It appeared to be traveling on its own course, unaffected by the usual laws of nature, as if it had been thrown like an enormous boomerang, flung through our solar system and then back out again. It traveled into our solar system from the direction of the star Vega, which is located about 25 light-years away from us. It intercepted the orbital plane of our solar system on September 6, 2017. By September 9th, its trajectory brought it closer to our sun, but by the end of the month, it had already passed by Venus. About a month later, it rocketed past Earth at a speed of about 58,900 miles per hour and was lost in the blackness of space, near the constellation Pegasus. Astronomers have been searching for a visitor like this for decades. Another astronomer said that it's quite surprising that they have never seen an interstellar object like this before. This was the first time. Now, the mysterious object is known as Oumuamua, Hawaiian, which means first scout from a distant place. Avi Loeb argued in his scientific paper that Oumuamua's unusual shape and its surprising acceleration suggest that it could be a light sail, a spacecraft driven by sunshine made by aliens. He doesn't claim that it's an alien craft, only that scientists should consider the possibility, and clearly he's not alone. A large alien party might not be far behind. Stone-encrusted teeth. An ancient elongated skull with stone-encrusted teeth was discovered buried in the ruins of Teotihuacan by Mexican archaeologists. The skull dates back 1,600 years and probably belonged to a woman from the upper class. The experts found her buried with 19 offering jars, but it was her teeth and long head that really blew them away. Most of her teeth had bits of stone embedded within them, while one of her teeth was a prosthetic made from a green stone called serpentine. She is one of the most unique skeletons that has ever been found in the ancient Mesoamerican city, built by a people even older than the Aztecs. The city of Teotihuacan, which translates roughly to the City of the Gods, dates back 2,500 years and had a large population of around 200,000 people. Much of the city's past is unknown, with scientists not knowing who built it, who lived in it, or where they went when they left. The Aztecs didn't even know where the city came from when they stumbled upon it over 1,000 years later. But here's the deal with the bizarre woman and her skeleton. According to the National Anthropology and History Institute, she died around the age of 40, but was not a native to the area. Her cranium was elongated in the most extreme manner possible, using a technique to compress the skull that was not actively practiced anywhere in what is today Mexico. She is the only skeleton of her kind, and to be honest, experts are completely stumped over where she came from or why she was buried deep beneath the mysterious City of the Gods. Just want to give a big shout out to Lindsay Armstrong and Travis Smith. Thanks so much for spending time with us and for supporting this channel. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the Origins Explained family. Ancient organisms. A series of newly discovered fossils have turned the scientific community upside down. The fossils are so strange and so rare that they could change what we know about how the Earth began and even the beginning of the solar system. The discovery takes us to a remote corner of Australia near the Tropic of Capricorn. The region is called Pilbara Craton, and it formed 3.5 billion years before today, when the planet was still a baby. It was here, buried in the rock, where researchers uncovered small fossilized tubes that look like tiny worms. Samples of these rocks have become the most controversial rocks ever collected. The small tubes could just be the oldest life forms to ever live on Earth. According to John Valley, a scientist with the University of Wisconsin, the tubes are definitely fossilized life forms that date back 3.465 billion years. This changes the narrative that most of us learned in school. It would mean that just 0.5 billion years after Earth was formed, when it was still just a hot rock, still being pummeled by asteroids from outer space, somehow life began. The reason this is so crazy is that up until now, scientists have agreed that the planet was too inhospitable for life so early on. Instead, life may have evolved when the planet was still basically a lump of hard rock and flowing lava. This in turn means that life could start pretty much anywhere, on any planet, at any time. Three-fingered aliens. A group of three-fingered alien mummies were uncovered in Peru just a few years ago, almost immediately dismissed as nothing but a hoax. The skeletons were definitely real. They were ancient mummies with elongated skulls. But the alien part was completely ignored by professional scientists, obviously. Now, thanks to Dr. Konstantin Korotkov with the St. Petersburg Federal University, we can say that there might be more to this alien theory than previously thought. According to what the Russian doctor told news sources, he did DNA testing to prove that the mummified bodies are not human. He claims that after receiving a tissue sample of one of the mummies and doing genetic tests, he was able to rule out full human DNA. Whatever this thing was when it was alive, the doctor says it either came from outer space or was some kind of cyborg. However, the doctor is already something of a pariah in the scientific community. He became a world-renowned joke in 2008 when he claimed to the world that he made a camera that could photograph the human soul. Either this guy's a genius and aliens exist, or his imagination just runs wild. The Ark of the Covenant. Archaeologists in Israel recently made the outlandish claim that they discovered the stone on which the legendary Ark of the Covenant once sat. Most of us are aware of the Ark of the Covenant thanks to the Bible and, of course, Indiana Jones. But what a lot of people don't know is that a scientific debate has been going on as to just how real this religious artifact truly is. Researchers from Tel Aviv University claim the Ark of the Covenant is a real thing, beyond any shadow of a doubt. They discovered a temple that dates back 3,100 years near the town of Beit Shemesh. Within this temple is a large square table that looks strikingly similar to the mythical table described in the book of Samuel. The table was apparently used to hold the Ark of the Covenant once it returned to Israel, containing the 10 commandments that Moses received from God while on Mount Sinai, in what is today Egypt. Unfortunately, no actual evidence of the Ark of the Covenant was found. Nobody has seen this mysterious artifact, though the Ethiopians do claim to be keeping it in a secure church where no one is allowed to enter. There are many theories that it could be in various places around the world, protected by the Knights Templar or other secret societies. Dr. Zvi Lederman, who was involved in the project, says the temple once housed the artifact before being destroyed, plundered, and then turned into an animal pen. Enheduanna. The Akkadian poet Enheduanna is considered to be the first author in the world known by name, rather than just anonymous. She was a high priestess and daughter of the ruler Sargon the Great in ancient Sumer. In 2285 BC, Sargon the Great united the kingdoms of Sumer and Akkad by being the first to conquer an empire in human history. Once the two kingdoms were merged, Enheduanna helped solidify her father's political power and unite the Sumerian city-states by uniting all minor gods under one larger and more powerful Sumerian goddess named Inanna. The Sumerian and Akkadian gods were joined into one house, thereby creating stability in the new empire. Enheduanna wrote a collection of 42 hymns, which are today considered the first written stories by a named author. There are even more that have been attributed to her, but because we don't know how their language was spoken, there is no way to know the format and style of her poems. The amazing thing is that the Sumerians left behind records of their powerful leaders from so long ago, who in turn left a literary legacy that would change the very nature of their gods and how people understood and worshipped the divine. It was these writings that would later influence the prayers and psalms of the Hebrew Bible. Talking plants. Depending on who you ask, plants can not only listen, they can talk back. The truth about plants and how smart they are has been debated by scientists for years. Even right now, scientists are debating whether flowers and different plants can talk to one another, if they can communicate with other living things, and just how intelligent they really are. Take a study from 2017, for example. Monica Gagliano proved scientifically that plants transmit and receive information through acoustics. They can actually sense when water is vibrating with their roots. Scientists theorize this is what helps them to find water underground. Monica and her team even discovered that plants will sometimes change the direction of their growth based on sound frequencies. If there's a sound from nearby making a frequency a plant doesn't like, it can push its roots in the other direction. As for understanding human words, that hasn't been proven just yet, which is probably a good thing. A lot of people don't talk really well about vegetables. Some claim plants grow better when exposed to certain music, but a lot of this is just based on anecdotal evidence. Science confirms that plants can hear frequencies. We just don't know yet if they can hear human voices and how much they actually understand. Skeletons. There is nothing quite as strange as discovering a gruesome collection of skeletons in a dark and spooky forest. But that's exactly what happened on the morning of March 23rd, when Detective Sergeant Jennifer Soto received a telephone call that would lead her to a very unsettling mystery. Earlier this year, a caller claimed to have just found a human skull in a thick group of trees in the woods of Fort Myers, Florida. Detective Soto was doubtful at first, as the area of the forest was known as a place where hunters went to dispose of things like dead hogs and alligators. But when Jennifer arrived on the scene, it didn't take long for her and the other officers to discover over 8 skeletal bodies hidden throughout a small patch of forest. Most of the bones were found grown over by plants or covered with leaves, and they seemed to have been there for a very long time. The issue now was trying to figure out where the bodies came from. Was it the work of a deranged serial killer already long gone? Medical examiners looked to the bones for answers. They found that all the dead people were white males between the ages of 18 and 49. Their bones ended up in the forest sometime between 1980 and 2000. That's obviously not a great timeline, seeing as a lot can happen over 20 years. Researchers also noted that their teeth were in very good condition, suggesting the victims may have been wealthy since they had the finances to properly care for their teeth. To make the mystery even stranger, there was not a single piece of clothing or any other evidence other than the bones found in the woods. This means they were probably not buried with anything at all. While the discovery of the skeletons happened in 2007, all these years later it has never been solved. The police don't know what happened, and the community is quite concerned that a serial killer used the area to hide his victims. Or maybe this could be the work of an unscrupulous funeral home director who dumped bodies in the woods rather than dispose of them properly. Detective Soto says they have heard everything from people believing that it was the plane that went missing in the Bermuda Triangle to a mob hit in Tampa to children who went missing on a spring break trip. It is quite the cold case. I'm excited to announce that today's video was sponsored by Magellan TV, a documentary streaming service that was founded by filmmakers. Magellan TV covers ancient and modern history, war, nature, and biographies with some of the richest and most varied history content available anywhere. There's also science, true crime, travel, and more. My favorite right now is Egypt, the temples saved from the Nile. It's an incredible depiction of how many ancient Egyptian temples were dismantled and relocated with ingenious rescue operations to save them from the rising levels of the River Nile. Abandoned Castle. A hiker in New Jersey stumbled upon a mysterious abandoned castle in the woods. New Jersey is definitely the last place you would expect to find an abandoned castle, and yet there it was, surrounded by trees and clearly forgotten. This is the Van Slyke Castle, once the private home of a man named William Porter, who got rich with stocks in New York. Porter died in a car accident before he could ever complete his castle in the forest. His widow inherited the unfinished building, married a new man, and her new husband, Warren Van Slyke, went on to finish what Porter had started. But Van Slyke was an old fellow too, and he died soon after the castle was completed, leaving Porter's original widow to live alone in this creepy place until she passed on in 1940. After this, the castle was abandoned. Then, in 1959, a group of vandals burned the ancient estate down. It was so totally destroyed by the fire that nothing remained except its stone foundation. The ruins of the castle can still be found in the New Jersey woods, though it's quite a hike to get there. The roof has caved in and there is no trace of the luxurious interior. It looks like a crumbling ruin you'd expect to find somewhere in England, not in New Jersey. Would you live in a castle in the woods? Let me know in the comments below. Dead dragon. One of the strangest things ever found in a forest has to be a real-life dragon. As far as the story goes, a mystical Chinese dragon with white fur like a rabbit, 2 spiky horns, and a pair of extremely long whiskers was spotted in the woods in Malaysia. The dragon had big black claws on the ends of its feet. It looked to be about 20 feet long, and it was shot down by a fruit farmer who discovered the dragon eating his livestock. But it didn't go down easily. When the farmer spotted the dragon, it made a sound like a growling tiger. He had to put 8 shots into the beast before it finally hit the ground. Then he posed and took some pictures with the mythical animal. But just how much of this story is true? Probably none of it. It is more some type of strange legend mixed with reality and then spread around the world. If there were really dragons prowling the forest, chances are someone would have caught one by now, right? It was most likely the pictures of the dead dragon are part of a hoax. The dragon was nothing more than a sculpture created in an art studio, but there are still plenty who choose to believe that there are many mysterious creatures lurking in the woods, and this is just one of them. New England artifacts. Artifacts over 12,000 years old have been found in the woods of New England at the Mashantucket Pequot Reservation. This is one of the oldest continuously occupied reservations anywhere in North America. As you can imagine, it has yielded plenty of archaeological secrets over the years. The earliest people who lived in the area were the Paleo-Indians, who moved into New England at around the time of the last ice age. They had an encampment on what is today the reservation. Excavations here over the last 2 years have uncovered artifacts like spear tips made for hunting and knives used for butchering animals and scraping hide. Experts say the Paleo-Indians relied heavily on caribou and waterfowl to survive. The stone tools were used to separate all the usable pieces of the animals they hunted. Researchers took a hard look at the rock tools to better understand the artifacts. What they discovered is that the stones used to make the tools came from as far away as Pennsylvania and Maine. The Paleo-Indians were more nomadic than previously thought, probably returning each season to their encampment in New England. To learn more, be sure to check out the Mashantucket Pequot Museum and Research Center in Connecticut, USA. Mutilated cows. The remains of a horribly mutilated cow were discovered in a remote part of the Freetown Fall River State Forest. But before you start blaming the aliens and their UFOs, police say the animal was part of a ritualistic killing. It also wasn't the first. Other cows like this have been found across Massachusetts. A dirt biker came across one poor cow victim and got super creeped out and called the police. Several months before, approximately a dozen calves were found in the exact same spot, slaughtered and ripped apart as if wolverines had gotten a hold of them. According to Freetown Police Detective Lieutenant Alan L. Alves, the dead cows are related to a satanic cult that has been operating in the forest for more than 2 decades. The lieutenant claims something horrifying is going on in the Massachusetts forest, with a group worshipping the devil and sacrificing animals for the past 20 years without ever being caught. These most recent cow deaths, according to the lieutenant, were in preparation for a holiday in the satanic calendar known as the Grand Climax. In the days leading up to the holiday, the local Satanists steal cows and sacrifice them, using their blood in dark rituals like vampires. Lieutenant Alves says it's not really a major crime, and we have to be careful with freedom of religion issues. He said we're between a rock and a hard place. They're lucky the local cults only deal with animals and not people. Carnivorous plants. For the first time in over 20 years, a new carnivorous plant has been discovered by researchers in the woods, and apparently it was hiding in plain sight the whole time. A study was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, in which researchers describe how they found the flowering plant. It's called Triantha occidentalis, and it grows all along the Pacific coast, including much of Canada and California. Scientists have known about the plant for years. They just never suspected it might be a flesh-eating carnivore. The thing is that most plants that eat insects live in wetlands and bogs where the soil lacks nutrients. It doesn't make a lot of sense that a carnivorous plant would be living in California. Yet when the researchers stuck dead fruit flies onto the stem of the plant, they were shocked to find the plant absorbing the dead insects. Nobody had noticed it doing this before. Once scientists realized they were dealing with a carnivorous plant, they began doing experiments. They found that the plant has the unique ability to tell which insects it should eat and which insects it should leave alone because they are beneficial pollinators. It does this by keeping its stem just a little bit sticky. It's not sticky enough to trap things like bees and butterflies, but it is strong enough to trap annoying little fruit flies. Once the fruit flies get stuck to the plant, it slurps up their nutrients. The Chupacabra. A family in South Texas say they have finally killed the mythical Chupacabra monster after it emerged from the woods and ran into their backyard. Doug and Lucy Ort put the mysterious beast on display after their grandson gunned the thing down from 240 yards. They had seen the creature prowling around in the woods, and when it came out, their grandson thought it was a monster and grabbed his gun. When they finally saw it close up, they knew they had finally captured the mysterious Chupacabra. Just as a refresh, the Chupacabra is said to be a creature that lives somewhere around northern Mexico and Texas. It is kind of like a vampire wolf, something that looks a bit like a coyote but feeds by sucking the blood from goats. The beast shot in South Texas looks exactly how the Chupacabra has been described. It had lanky legs, gnarly sharp teeth, and it looked almost like a mutant coyote. Unfortunately, animal experts have come forward to dismiss the claims as nonsense, saying the creature was in fact just some kind of coyote or a wild dog. But since no DNA testing has been done, we really can't rule out a Chupacabra. The Rendlesham Forest UFO. 40 years ago in Suffolk, England, an alien UFO was spotted in the Rendlesham Forest. A man named Vince Thurkettle was chopping wood early in the morning in December of 1980 when a black car stopped on the side of the road, and two men dressed in suits got out to ask him some questions. They wanted to know if he had witnessed any mysterious lights coming from above the forest. Vince said he hadn't seen anything, and the men got back in their car and drove away. It wasn't until 3 years later that there was a strange story on the front page of the local newspaper claiming a UFO had landed in Suffolk back in December of 1980. As it turns out, just before the mysterious men in suits visited Vance in the woods, there had been sightings of unexplained lights in that very forest near the Royal Air Force Woodbridge base. At the time, the base had been used by the United States Air Force. It was U.S. personnel who witnessed a glowing metallic object in the sky and multiple colored lights shining through the trees. The next day, servicemen investigated the forest and found strange triangular impressions in the dirt, along with burn marks and some broken branches. It looked as though some kind of aircraft had landed in a clearing and then took off again. To this day, the aircraft has never been identified, and no government agency has ever admitted there was an alien encounter in the Rendlesham Forest. Ghosts in the woods. An Australian hiker believes that he witnessed a ghost while exploring a remote chunk of woods in a national park near Toowoomba. According to what the hiker said, he felt as if someone was watching him. Then he was besieged by an inexplicable feeling of dread. Luckily, the hiker had his camera and started taking pictures of his surroundings. He actually got so creeped out that he hiked back out of the woods to safety. It wasn't until later on that he inspected the photographs and noticed a shadowy figure in one of them. The shadow appears to be that of a little girl, or maybe a little boy, standing by a fallen tree and staring straight into the hiker's camera. Ever since the hiker posted the pictures along with his story, the photo of the ghost has been getting mixed reactions. Some people believe, some people don't. However, considering this particular part of the forest is known to be a popular place where people go to die, it makes sense that one or two lost souls is still loitering in the woods. Human dog creature. A creature that is half human and half dog has apparently been killing people's pets all across the United States. The beast has been nicknamed the Dog Man, with eyewitnesses describing it as a werewolf that stands on two legs and howls at night. The creature is roughly 9 feet tall and has been estimated to weigh upwards of 300 pounds. One witness even managed to snap a photograph of the supposed dogman trudging through the woods near Bellbrook, Ohio. Despite what you want to believe, there is no debating the fact that pets are being mutilated and killed all across America by something huge that walks on two legs and is covered in black fur. There have even been paw prints found belonging to an unknown animal that could be the dogman. Unfortunately, nobody has managed to catch or kill the thing yet. It's also a huge mystery because nobody can explain how a single creature is traveling freely between so many states without being caught. Some say there may be more than one werewolf-type creature on the loose. Even if this isn't a real monster, there is definitely something strange going on in the woods, and it wants to eat your pets. Camp Century. Camp Century was a top-secret U.S. military project from the Cold War. Officially, the camp in Greenland was going to be a scientific research facility, but the truth is that the camp was a cover for a huge nuclear launch site built under the ice, capable of launching nuclear missiles directly at the USSR. It was supposed to remain a secret probably forever, but now the melting ice cap is threatening to reveal everything. This base is located only 800 miles south from the North Pole, and it is a hidden fortress of ice tunnels stretching at least 2,500 miles. Known as the City Under the Ice, it was something right out of a spy novel. It was originally meant to hold around 600 nuclear missiles underneath the ice, allowing the United States to quickly strike anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere. At that time, Greenland belonged to Denmark, but the Danish government had no idea this was going on. Officially called Project Iceworm, the first series of tunnels were built, but before the entire facility could get up and running, the military realized that they had made a horrible mistake. It seemed that the ice was too unstable. It constantly shifted and moved, making the enormous project quite dangerous. Over the next 10 years, the place was used off and on until it was ultimately abandoned. But before the soldiers left, they buried the biological, chemical, and radioactive waste, thinking that it would be frozen for eternity. Except now, a lot of the ice is melting. Researchers are trying to figure out just how deep everything was buried so they can get it out before it starts seeping into the ocean and into the air. Right now, the US, Greenland, and Denmark are trying to figure out what to do with the once top-secret nuclear project. Besides this whole Camp Century dilemma, there is another problem left over from the Cold War in Greenland. In 1968, a U.S. military jet crashed with 4 nuclear bombs on board. Most of it was cleaned up, but only 3 of the 4 bombs were recovered. There is one still out there, but nobody knows where it is. It may have melted through the ice, then frozen back over, but the mission to recover it failed. The U.S. government revealed in declassified documents that if they couldn't find it, they don't think that anyone else has either. That's not that reassuring, is it? There are still concerns over the environmental and health impacts that these lost bombs and toxic waste are going to have when the ice melts. Fighting cucumbers. Sea cucumbers have a bizarre defense mechanism like nothing you've ever seen before. Surviving in the ocean takes guts, and these guys know all about it. These weird animals are related to starfish and sea urchins, but their body is soft and squishy. But behind this peaceful exterior is a shocking creature that will puke up its own intestines when it feels threatened. Researchers have discovered that when a sea cucumber is attacked, it is able to eject its innards in an attempt to ward off the enemy. They literally barf out their insides, in the same way that a squid might spit ink into the face of its attacker. It's not just their stomachs, but long tendrils of intestines that are supposed to tangle up and scare off predators. The filaments are sticky and toxic. If a fish gets stuck in it, it could die. Even more amazing is that the sea cucumber is then able to regrow its intestines in just a few weeks. Scientists working with the Institute of Oceanography were trying to figure out how they are able to do this. They recently sequenced the genome of a particular species of sea cucumber that does this, and they found that sea cucumbers diverged from their sea star cousins about 479 million years ago. They also found 2 sets of genes that could be responsible for how the sea cucumber regenerates its insides. While a lot of this research is still in its infant phase, scientists are hopeful that by studying the sea cucumber's weird fighting techniques and regenerative powers, they could help humans to develop the same powers in the future, just like Wolverine. Why do you always get lost in casinos? You might ask yourself how you lost all that money after a visit to the casino. Where did the time go? And where the heck is the door? Casinos are specifically designed to keep you as happy and relaxed as possible, and it is an exact science. Among many other things, casinos are designed like a maze on purpose. Writer Bill Friedman in his book Stripping Las Vegas discusses the psychology of casino design. Friedman says that the best kind of casino layout is like a labyrinth made up of slot machines, bars, fun games, shops, and other distractions. The gambler tries to find their way out through this elaborate maze, but a combination of short pathways and hard-to-reach exits mean it's more likely that they'll stop to spend some more money. Some casinos are designed like intimate spaces rather than gaming zones the size of aircraft hangars. This creates a sense of comfort along with the confusion. Add to this perks like free drinks, and it's no wonder you decided to try your luck on the Megabucks machine. You couldn't even find your way to the exit. Plus, it's hot as hell outside, at least in Vegas, so why not stay and chill for just a little while longer? $5 more won't hurt, right? So maybe you never gamble or go to Vegas. So what? Another place where you might get lost is inside a giant shopping mall. How often do you get lost at the mall? Really? It was designed that way on purpose. The name for that feeling of being lost is called the Gruen transfer, and it's a word meant to describe the sensation of being lost inside of a shopping center. The word comes from the original inventor of the modern mall, an Austrian architect named Victor Gruen. He helped to open the first mega mall in the United States in 1956 in Minnesota. The thought behind the original mall was to build an environment that would cause consumers to forget where they were, disorient them, and convince them to spend more money. Do you sense a theme here? Casinos and malls are in cahoots. When you can't find your way out of a mall and you get lost, it's the Gruen transfer, because Victor Gruen designed malls in such a way that people would almost always get lost, and this would result in you wandering around and spending more money. Man swells like a balloon. Alejandro Ramos, a fisherman from Peru, blew up like a balloon after a diving accident. He was diving deep in the ocean for shellfish when a cargo ship cut off his oxygen supply line in 2014. He lost his only source of compressed air and rushed to the water surface in an effort to save his life. Incredibly, Martinez survived, but the change in pressure from his rapid ascent left his body looking like Popeye's, with a massively swollen chest and arms that packed 66 pounds onto his frame. It's believed that these strange and excruciatingly painful effects were caused by nitrogen swelling in the man's body. Nitrogen becomes compressed inside a diver's body when they are exposed to increased pressure in the water. The nitrogen re-expands as the diver rises to the surface, and if this is done too quickly, it can block the blood and result in a dangerous condition called decompression syndrome, or the bends. But when Martinez lost his oxygen supply, he did not have the luxury of safely emerging from the water. This is extremely dangerous. The bends can cause paralysis or death if nitrogen bubbles are in the brain, and it can cause extreme tissue and nerve damage. Photos taken 4 years after the accident show that the damage to Martinez's body is unfortunately permanent. He says his bones ache and his chest hisses when he breathes. He remained holed up at home for a long time after, unable to afford proper medical treatment and feeling too embarrassed about how he looked to leave. At one point, Martinez even became suicidal. Thankfully, an underwater medicine specialist heard about the man's case, examined him, and volunteered to provide the necessary treatments to start the long road to recovery. Martinez said, "There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe one day I'll go diving again and see the islands." Why were roller coasters invented? Do you like roller coasters? People want to ride roller coasters because they're fast, they're exciting, give you a sense of danger, and people generally like being a little bit scared. But the thrill of the ride is not why roller coasters were invented in the first place. Roller coasters were actually invented in the late 1800s as a way to distract people from their sinful lives. Believe it or not, Lamarcus Adna Thompson was trying to find a new pastime for American citizens that would keep them out of drinking taverns, dance halls, brothels, gambling dens. You get the picture. All of these places were becoming ridiculously popular following the Civil War, and some people wanted the United States to stay a little more wholesome. So this is where roller coasters came in. Like many Americans in the 1800s, Thompson was very religious, but he was also wealthy. On a trip to Pennsylvania, Thomas witnessed a group of people riding an old mining cart down the tracks for fun. This was the original idea for the roller coaster. It was an abandoned railway that had been converted into an experience. People would pay $1 to ride the mining cart, which could throttle a person at speeds found nowhere else on Earth. Amazingly, the ride went on for 80 minutes, and it was only $1. That sounds awesome! Anyway, when Thompson saw the railway, the idea for the roller coaster was born. Thompson opened his first one in 1884 at Coney Island. People had a blast, but it didn't stop them from hanging out in taverns and brothels. How many atomic bombs have been detonated since 1945? You might be surprised because it's probably a lot more than you think. since the U.S. detonated its first atomic bomb at a desert test site in New Mexico on July 16, 1945, the highly lethal explosive has been a game-changer of modern warfare and diplomatic relations. Between then and the opening of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty for signatures in 1996, over 2,000 nuclear explosions have been carried out in various countries, including the U.S., Russia, the UK, France, China, and India. Following the introduction of the CTBT, India, Pakistan, and North Korea have performed nuclear tests, with North Korea being responsible for the most recent detonation in 2017. Nuclear tests have been performed in many different environments, including above ground, underwater, underground, suspended in the air, on barges, and on towers, according to the United Nations. Over 500 bombs, around 25%, were exploding in the atmosphere despite growing concern over radioactive fallout since the 1950s and incidents of contamination in civilian regions, including the Marshall Islands. The CTBT is widely supported, having collected signatures from 185 countries, but the treaty cannot enter into force until 44 countries that possess nuclear technology sign it. It currently lacks 8 such signatures, including from Israel, the US, China, Egypt, India, Iran, North Korea, and Pakistan. What did people use before toilet paper? This is a question most people have wondered privately, but you may have been too shy to Google it. Don't worry, we did it for you to keep your browser history clean. The answer is a lot of things. Modern toilet paper wasn't available in the United States at least until the mid-19th century, even though now we can't live without it. Just look at what happened in 2020. The earliest historical accounts of using wads of tissue came from China in the 6th century. In the Middle East and India, traditionally people use nothing except water in their left hand. The same tradition carried on to Europe, where even now some countries still install bidets in every bathroom. In Japan, they use flat sticks. In ancient Greece, they used pottery shards and went in a left-to-right motion. Then we have the ancient Romans, who use a public latrine with a sponge attached to a stick, kind of like a loofah. The sea sponge would be dunked in a bucket of salt water or vinegar, and then you would rinse it out and leave it in the bucket for the next person. Everyone used the same sponge. Ugh. Native Americans used handfuls of straw, oyster shells, or even dried corn cobs. Immigrants started using corn cobs too. Corn cobs were plentiful for the early farmers, and apparently they were quite effective at getting the job done. Even after toilet paper was invented and widely available, many states still preferred using dried corn cobs and kept them in the outhouse. More recently, people around the world use newspapers and pages ripped from telephone books. Crazy McDonald's menus. Everyone's heard that McDonald's has some crazy items on the menu in other countries besides the United States. In the US, the menu seems pretty straightforward. You know, nuggets, burgers, fries. But if you've ever wanted to know exactly how weird McDonald's gets, you're in for a real treat. How about macaroni and cheese with bacon in a toasted sandwich? If that doesn't give you a heart attack, I don't know what will. It actually was on the menu in Hong Kong but got removed. But if you happen to be in Hong Kong, apparently they serve all kinds of pasta and soups with sausage and egg toppings. In Canada at one point, you could get a lobster roll and french fries covered in gravy and cheese curds. China has all kinds of things. For some strange reason, it seems like they thought the hamburgers were missing something, so they decided to add a scoop of mashed potatoes inside the burger. More carbs, anyone? They have fun stuff like pineapple pie and taro pie, which is a purple vegetable that tastes like a sweet potato. Now, I really want to try that. They also had black and white burgers where the buns were just that, black or white. The black burger bun was made with squid ink. In Japan, you can also get a fillet of shrimp burger, which is literally a burger stuffed full of shrimp instead of beef. They have banana-flavored shakes and chocolate-covered french fries. And how about McNoodles? In Austria, McDonald's served a stir-fry bowl filled with noodles and vegetables imported from Thailand. There's an apricot sundae in Turkey, vegetarian spinach and cheese nuggets in Italy, McCurry pan in India with chicken and vegetables in a curry sauce served in rectangular bread, a white porridge stew in Malaysia, even a McRice burger where the bun is actually made from rice cakes in the Philippines. Might be a little too crunchy for me. You name it, a McDonald's somewhere has probably tried it. What's the craziest thing you've ever seen at a McDonald's? Anything special you would want to try? Let me know in the comments below. The sun is pushing the planets away. Measuring over 100 times wider than Earth and almost 300,000 times our planet's mass, the Sun is almost incomprehensibly massive. So much so, in fact, that 1,000,000 Earths would fit inside it. So the 4 to 6 million tons of mass per second that the Sun sheds is not a large amount, but it seems like a lot to us. The Sun loses mass two ways: through solar fusion, by converting mass into energy that turns into light and warms the Earth, and through its solar wind, a stream of subatomic particles that blow away from the Sun. Consequently, as the Sun's mass decreases, so does its gravitational pull on the planets, causing them to drift slightly further away. If the Sun loses 1% of its mass, the Earth's orbit increases by 1%. But nobody panic. This happens so slowly that even scientists have difficulty measuring the changes. It would take 65,000 years for the Earth to move a kilometer away from the Sun. Besides that, ever since it sprang into existence 4.5 billion years ago, the Sun has only lost a tiny fraction of its mass, even though there were probably times when it was losing more mass than it is now. Niagara Falls versus orange peel. Have you ever looked at a waterfall and thought, gee, I wonder if I could go down it in a barrel? For some reason, daredevils love trying to do this. The first person to do it and survive was Annie Taylor in 1901. She went down Niagara Falls in a wooden barrel that was airtight. The second person was Bobby Leach. He took the plunge in 1911 inside of a large steel barrel. He broke both of his kneecaps and fractured his jaw, but he recovered during a 6-month hospital stay and went on to become a performer with the Barnum and Bailey Circus. But circus stunts proved too mundane for the daredevil, and Leach eventually resumed the crazy stunts that he had become world famous for. Surprisingly, though, he is remembered for something else: his death. While touring in New Zealand in 1926, Leach slipped on an orange peel and broke his leg. The 68-year-old's injury soon became infected and turned gangrenous, and his leg had to be amputated. Leach never recovered from the accident. In fact, his health deteriorated rapidly, and 2 months later he died. He defied death hundreds of times just to be taken down by an orange peel. President Andrew Jackson's parrot. U.S. presidents almost always have a pet of some sort, but Andrew Jackson is the only former commander-in-chief who had a foul-mouthed parrot. Named Pole, the African gray was originally a gift for his wife Rachel, but she passed away, leaving the bird in Old Hickory's care. Nobody knows for sure what happened, but somewhere along the line, Pole the parrot started swearing like a sailor. Although it might not be that surprising, given that Andrew Jackson also had a reputation for being tough and having a bad temper. The parrot was among thousands who attended Jackson's funeral after he passed away in 1845, and he reportedly did not pay his respects very well. While everyone was gathered, the parrot started swearing loudly, throwing out cuss words left and right. Everyone was shocked, and the bird had to be removed. It's unknown what happened to Pole after Jackson's death. The cracker cult. Most people have never heard of Sylvester Graham, an early 19th century minister with a severe aversion to sex and masturbation. But almost everyone knows about his invention, the graham cracker. He actually created the cracker in an effort to curb people's lustful urges. Believing that consuming certain substances and foods, including alcohol, sugar, and meat, gave rise to certain behaviors, Graham advocated for a strictly vegetarian diet, minus processed flour and spices. At the time, the typical snack cracker was sugary and processed. As an alternative, Graham invented a cracker made from bran, wheat germ, and unprocessed wheat flour. The snack, and Graham's anti-sex diet in general, became surprisingly popular, attracting a cult following of people who moved into boarding houses to practice the prescribed lifestyle. They became known as Grahamites and engaged in numerous bizarre customs in the name of health, including cold showers and sleeping on hard mattresses. Graham's movement was short-lived, however, with his followers distancing themselves from the strange belief system shortly after his death at age 57. He would probably roll over in his grave to learn that the National Biscuit Company obtained the rights to his cracker recipe in 1898 and decided to sweeten it up with honey. They eventually became the graham crackers we know and love today, which are used for an array of goodies that Graham himself would have disapproved of, including pie crusts, cakes, and s'mores. Not to mention, there are now cinnamon and chocolate graham cracker varieties, which would be strict no-nos under the minister-turned-lifestyle guru standards. Thanks for watching! Hope you learned something new today. Which fact was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for more videos like these. See you next time! Bye!